Can
Why hide
can
it?
we just be reminded that this will be a recorded video and everything we say and do will be analysed. So let's all be really respectful and act accordingly.
Okay.
We
Well said,
are
Renee.
Hi,
Renee.
Renee.
Yes.
Hi, Renee.
Hello, Jessie.
Well,
How
I'll
are
tell you
you,
what we'll do.
lovely?
I'll pause. I'll pause. So that's because there's been a few people ask for a recording to be made available after, because some of them are out at dinner tonight and they've got various plans or working, etc. So the idea of the recording is to provide this to other people at another time. So thank you all. Start at the beginning. Thank you all for joining in, and appreciate that it was short notice, but we are kind of at the pointy end of things, being that it's Wednesday, the 17th of January, and the parliamentary inquiry. Twins, please keep the noise down a bit. The parliamentary inquiry resumes on the 5th of February. And to my mind, there's several important elements here. The issue that we have is we are challenging the authenticity, the integrity, and the accuracy of the National Parks and Wildlife Service of New South Wales horse counting over many years. And here is an opportunity which we, the people, have backed and funded, that we have the opportunity to do a new style of counting, which should be authoritative, accurate, and it's an open source, open book. Anybody can analyze it, anybody can interrogate it type of count. And that's what's missing with the national park. They won't give us their raw numbers. And just yesterday, I think it was yesterday, Di Hardley got a response to her GIPA application where she sought access or copies of the national park's audio recording of their counting observers doing their horse count in a helicopter. So how that works is the national parks fly a helicopter along a route, and they generally follow a similar route each year, and it's GPS tracked, and you can see the plot on a map. And as the helicopter flies about 60 meters above the ground, there are two observers sitting on each side of the helicopter with open doors, and they're looking out each side of the chopper wearing a headset because it's very noisy. And the headset has an audio system linked to the pilot and the observer spotter sitting next to the pilot. That audio track is recorded, and the observers, twins, no noise, please. Sorry, my twins are hanging around. The audio track is then later transcribed, which is what happens every day in courts and all kinds of things. And then that transcription is then audio becomes paper, words on paper, and then the observations are plotted on the map, and then they create a tally or a number of horses based on what the observers say they saw. And there's no video to back this up, and that's the next problem. There's no video, which would be quite handy to give more authenticity to this count. And then Mr. Cairns applies his methodology, and he multiplies or amplifies the results to make up for horses allegedly not seen, or horses theoretically in the landscape. Maybe they were in the trees or behind a rock type of thing. And that's how we end up with an insane number of horses, which the government has said has been a peer-reviewed process, but the peers, the company that made the software, have criticised. It was a negative peer review, and they said it is biologically impossible to achieve the numbers. That's the background. Where we are currently at is we've had a parliamentary inquiry, we've had lobbies, we've had an attempt at an injunction to stop the killing through sustainability, some money was raised, a lawyer was engaged, opinions were obtained. And one of those opinions was that without an authoritative count of the horses in the park, you could not seek an injunction in a court and ask a magistrate to order the government to stop killing the horses as they believe they're entitled to under the Wild Horse Management Plan, without there being a credible count which would say there are less than 3,000 horses. You are therefore under the minimum number of horses allowed to be retained in the park in accordance with the Wild Horse Management Plan, and therefore you shall stop shooting. And because we don't have an accurate count, we could not achieve an injunction, and that process was abandoned. There is a trail of documents, and certain parties have obtained access to these documents under questionable circumstances, and there are certain implied threats that these documents will be released, and that they will be released without the appropriate context. And that's one of the behaviours I've called out. The documents are legal documents. They can be released, but they must be understood in the context of how they were being used. And that's slightly complex. And this is not the venue for that. So to that end, and with great relief, many of us were relieved to see do that quietly, please. A count proposed by a fellow named Rocky Harvey, along with Claire Galea. Now, many of us knew Claire. I'd certainly met Claire, and Sustainability and Di and many others had built a strong relationship with Claire. Many of us watched Claire give her evidence in the parliamentary inquiry, and we remember Claire from the kangaroo issues with the counting of the kangaroos for the kangaroo culls. So she's got the runs on the board, and we're very grateful to Claire for she's an incredibly busy woman, and she's making time to make herself available for this. There was a count methodology proposed and detailed by Claire in the parliamentary inquiry. The Greens tried to attack her credibility and they failed. And then there was a general positive feeling towards supporting this count, and a target of 75,000 was determined. And part of the background to that was Rocky told me in a chat that I had on the phone with him was that was an estimate of what Claire and Rocky expected the cost could be to do a count of sufficient comparison to the national parks count. In other words, to cover a similar area. So it wasn't a quote, it was an estimate, a budget estimate. And I asked him to try to substantiate that, or did you get quotes? Did you get quotes from other companies? How did you arrive with airborne logic? And the answer was basically they felt that they were the most suited to do this task. So I have an increasing number of questions. As a fairly smart person, and I know a lot of people, and I won't monologue forever, but I'm just giving you the background to everything as I see it. And I've also covered some of this in my live chats and what have you. So Airborne Logic, they have a website, and it lists two people on their website, and Andy Chambers and I think a Mike Barnes. And in doing some deeper research, I found that there is an Andy Chambers, Mike Barnes, Hayden Dyer, Dan French, Dr. Davina White, and Mark Siebentrit. They are the people, the 7 employees apparently in the business, and the businesses have been around a couple of years. It's based out of an incubator in the Uni of Adelaide. And they are proposing to do this imagery acquisition using the strong cameras and the RGB cameras. and that these cameras can look down to the ground and 1 pixel equals 2 centimeters. Now, my understanding is that 2 centimeters of the ground is 1 pixel to the camera, with the camera at 1,000 meters. That's great stuff. That's fantastic. Now, when I look at Airborne Logic, all of their photos and all of their media presence is drones the size of a coffee table, surveying crops in a paddock and paddocks, not hundreds of square kilometres of national park at 1,000 metres elevation. So I've got a concern at their capability. Are Airborne Logic stepping up to a scale that they haven't done? Now, I've got some background in AI, and I know a lot of people. And there's a couple of important points here. In doing a bit of due diligence on this company myself, one of my friends in South Australia is an incredibly well-connected, she's just actually texting me now, an incredibly well-connected woman who has been involved in grant funding applications and politicians and councils and you name it. She knows a lot of people. She has not come across these people. She's heard of one of their names. And then secondly, I went to the Institute of Machine Learning in South Australia and met with the people there as part of a cooperative research centre proposal that I was involved in Burmese Grid business, which was one of the larger AI processing systems in the country now. And I met with one of the pretty top people in that institute, and I rang him today and had a chat. And he was surprised. He knew of Andy and he knew of Airborne Logic, and he was surprised when I explained the scope of this project. He was a bit shocked that Airborne would be leaping up to a project of this scale when they normally do grapes in vineyards and weed identification in paddocks with drones the size of a coffee table. So I'm seeking assurance that this company has the capacity. That's one point. I received a call back from Mr. Mark Siventrit, who is now no longer with Airborne Logic. I asked if he would comment on the scale of this project and the suitability of Airborne Logic to tackle this project, and he declined to answer that question, but he undertook to ask Andy Chambers, the managing director, to contact me. Now, Andy has been uncontactable. Nobody from Airborne Logic has been contactable. Rocky Harvey has been uncontactable. I did, however, have a chat with Claire very briefly today where she wouldn't chat. We've had a slight text exchange, and I've also read update number 10, which I'm not impressed with. The object of tonight is to ask the questions, discuss them amongst ourselves to arrive at a couple of core questions that I think should be addressed urgently. And there are quite a range of questions flowing even still from update number 10. And to be quick, blind faith in a project of this caliber with $80,000+ of community's money, blind faith is not acceptable. And as a test of the bona fides of the project coordinators, which is Rocky and Claire, Rocky has been unable or unwilling to provide me the account details to deposit my $1,000. I still haven't made that donation because Rocky has
Oh, looks like Andrew's popped off and it's kicked me into the role. So hello everyone, but we'll just wait for Andrew to pop back on.
Just while we're waiting for Andrew, Kylie's had her hand up since the start. Kylie, is there something you wanted to say or add? You can do that in the chat. You've had your hand up for a while. Does Kylie want to respond?
Sorry, the
Oh,
internet
sorry, I just
stopped.
unmuted it. No, that's just my little emoji. I'm just waving. That just says Kylie with her hand waving. I might take it off.
Beg your pardon. I thought you
Have
wanted
your
to
hand up.
answer
Kylie and a hand,
something.
and it's like, hello. Yeah, it's just the emoji wave.
Okay, all
So,
good. We didn't
yeah.
want to have you feeling ignored.
Oh, no, I would have piped
All right,
up.
so I'm back.
Thank you.
So I'm back. Don't know what happened. Just everything stopped. Sorry, so I was saying, I'll try to wrap this up. Blind faith is not acceptable. I've not been able to make my donation. And if you notice, the GoFundMe details have been changed. Now it says Rocky Harvey for Nick Kirshner. That occurred because I chased up Nick and Rocky hadn't set this up. And there are risks with raising money. I'm very glad that that's been sorted, but there still remains one outstanding risk in that the donation money has not been put through a registered charity. So, for example, the money could have gone through sustainability as a tax-exempt registered charity, so to speak, and then put in the trust account for Kirshner's, and that would satisfy the law with respect to community fundraising. So I'm just highlighting that because we know with regards to what happened to Dave O'Neig's with the fundraiser that he was involved in. Update number 10, I believe, is unacceptable. It's aggressive. It doesn't still answer the important questions. We are the client. So we, the people that have given the money, are the client. And Rocky and Claire are, in effect, our project managers liaising with Airborne Logic, to which there is a contract, apparently, which we would like to see. There is also the question still not answered about the intellectual property, the IP. And these are important value items. These are the commodity. The intellectual property that is built could be very valuable. And as I read the update, Airborne Logic proposed to own that. We will own the data and they will own the IP, meaning that they could tender their services to the national parks or any other state. They could offer to count whales, for example, out on the ocean using the IP that we, the community, have funded. We still have not been given a map of the target area. And to that extent, all we have been told is that it will not include Nunga, Coonville, Corango, and one other one, top of my head. We can only assume what areas will be counted. And again, assumption is where contracts fail or the client expectation is not met. So I think we can resolve, we maybe put a couple of motions up and can all agree we need a map of the target area. We need to agree to the target area, and to highlight that when this fundraiser was proposed, it's my memory and it's Di's memory and some others, is that there were 3 levels, as it were, proposed. There was a low level, a medium level, and a high level. And the high level was assumed that we would cover the maximum area similar to the national parks count. Well, we achieved more than the high level. The high level was 75,000 and we raised some 82.5, and the fees were removed. So there's around about 80,000 raised. The issue is then, if we've achieved the high area, why do we appear to only be surveying a low area? And in that, I was out in the park on Sunday and I drove through. I saw one mob crossing the highway at Kiandra, which you always see. I then drove up past Marika, Long Plain Gates, and all the way up to just shy of Blue Waterholes to the big plains right at the top, which I can never remember, the Coolaman and Peppercorn. No horses. I did not spot not one horse. I then turned around and drove all the way back to Port Phillip Trail, and it wasn't until after I crossed the Murrumbidgee then I saw the first mob on those Corongo flats, right near where those dead horses are that I videoed with Poppy and Di at the October long weekend. And between the Corongo flats and Ware's Yard, we spotted 10 mobs of horses in excess of 100 members. And that's those Nungar Plains. And that's where Snowy Hydro is. And I'm concerned that Snowy Hydro have brought pressure upon Rocky and Claire to say, do not survey where Snowy Hydro was working, because the high resolution imagery would show up exactly what they're doing. And we know that Snowy Hydro are doing some naughty things that they don't want anyone to see, which is why they post guards on the tracks. So you can't drive up Goandra Fire Trail, which you normally can, because there's a guard sitting on a chair at the highway preventing you from accessing Goandra Trail. Goandra Trail takes you up into the Nungar Plains, where there are traps, and a recent rumour of shooting in the Nungar traps. It's a rumour. No photos to prove that yet, but I couldn't get in there to check that rumour, which was one of my targets on Sunday. So another thing I would propose is that we would push that the Nungar, particularly the Corongo, are the target areas, because we know there are horses there. And I'll finish on this. This is a scientific analysis. We expect error. And in scientific analysis, you can quite often force an error to prove the outcome. And I hope that makes sense. You can deliberately force an error. So if you want to count a horse, you put a human in the frame and see if the computer counts the human as a horse. You put a human in a horse suit, which I'm prepared to do, and see if the computer counts the human in a plastic horse suit as a horse. And the argument put forward by the updates, apparently written by Rocky, that the computer might not be able to tell the difference between a dead horse carcass, which is now desiccated bones in most cases, and a lying down horse. Well, I say then that program is potentially not the right one to use, because how is it going to tell the difference between a deer and a foal? And that's important, because we're hoping to be able to tell the difference between a deer and a horse, a pig and a kangaroo. And that is the power that I believe this AI program, if it's the correct one, could bring to this count. And in that level of data analysis, we have removed all of the government's bullshit. And they then are held to fact, which is verifiable, and they are welcome to interrogate that themselves. Very, very finally, last word. I touched on this yesterday. We've got $80,000 available for this project. If the cost of the data acquisition is a third of the project, and a third of the project is data processing, and the next third of the project is the peer reviewing, then we can pay more money up front for the data acquisition and acquire more data, and we could raise some more money to pay for the peer reviewing, which happens at the end of the project, some weeks down the track. Or we could process half of the data and do more fundraising. We've lost a week now since Rocky promised the update of how many dollars per square kilometre and what is the survey area. We haven't had that information, and we haven't raised any money. We could change the scope of this project. It doesn't take away anyone's opportunity. It doesn't make Airborne Logic lose any money. Airborne Logic fly their plane over a wider area. We spend more money up front on data acquisition, and then we've got time to raise extra money, which we know we can do, to process the data and to engage peer review. So I'm going to throw across to Di, who's got her hand raised, and I'm going to invite Di to contribute quickly, and then we'll start opening up the floor for general discussion.
You there? Can
Yep,
you hear
we've
me?
got you.
Right.
Correct.
I've only got a couple of things on the update number 10 today and Claire's opening statement. Claire has stated for a long time, since after the kangaroo inquiry and her dealings with the Brumbies when she sat with Penny Sharp, and she stated in the inquiry that she'd no longer be working with animals. She finds it all too hard, banging her head against a brick wall. So it's got nothing to do with us questioning the count. That this was always Claire's intention. She was walking away from being a numbers girl with animals. So she's going on to humans, which would be very interesting. So I don't think that was an aggressive comment by her. She even stated that in the inquiry. Now, back to what Andrew's been saying about the count. I was quite happy that it was an independent count, and it was Claire and Rocky done the fundraising, because it took the BS out of groups bickering between one another. So there was never a problem with it being independent. But there is a problem with what we initially thought to what's happening now, because I'm of the belief that unless we cover most or a big portion of the areas that national parks do in their annual spot counting, when our count is not going to be recognised. We're back to the old thing when we've gone up in helicopters and we've had politicians. We're back to where Claire and Joanne Canning worked for weeks on a count and took it to Parliament, and it was knocked back. So that's why we have to get this right. And I think we know the areas we aren't covering are the areas where the majority of the horses are. We don't know the areas that are being covered. They haven't been stated. So that's where I have my problem, because we get one shot at this, and it's what we've all been thriving for a couple of years, to get a proper independent count. So I do believe that the public has a right to question the areas being covered. Rocky has stated, and Claire, where they're not counting, but they haven't stated where they're counting. And as we know, it's a vast area, and I think that needs to be made public for us to know. I also have a problem with the IP being owned by Airborne Logics, but, you know, if we can nut that out as we go through, sort of thing. Just by them owning it, we've paid for it, then they use that and earn money. I think that's, there's questions asked there. But my main problem is that we need to know what area we're covering, because if we're covering areas where there's not horses, what good's this count going to be? All this money, all this fundraising, all the resources and the work that Claire's put into it. And we're going to come up with the same old thing with national parks. Yeah, we're not interested in your count. So that's where my problem lies. That's about it.
Thank you, Di. Just touching on what Di said, and I remembered Claire and Joanne were asked by the government to provide a price to do an independent count, and they proposed a helicopter observer with a wildlife photographer and video recording, similar to the national parks way that they do it now and have done. And that price was $45,000, and that was tendered directly to the Minister for the Environment and that small working group.
Correct.
It was rejected. But that was the proposal. And now we're spending nearly double that on a much smaller area, albeit with different image acquisition. But that's a point. Renee, you've got your hand raised. Please jump in.
Yeah, Andrew, I just wanted to, does anyone know what the longest continuous open plain is in KNP that they might be referring to as the area that they're going to map?
I would say Long Plain, wouldn't it?
Well, I don't know.
Well, this is what I mean. We don't know.
They make reference that they will do the longest continuous open plain in KNP in the latest update, but what is that?
That's right. And
Well,
this
I
is
I
the
agree with your
question.
question, Renee. And when you think about Long Plain, I'm just working through my mind. You come off the highway, you cross over a ridge when you get to Long Plain Camp,
Mhm.
and there's a bit of an intersection of bush, and then you range along, you end up with Coonbill. That's probably the longest section of open plain. And then you enter a forested section before you then come out at the intersection, turn off left to Brindabella or turn right to Blue Waterholes. You then have to transgress through bush before you then drop in through Peppercorn and Coolaman. But we're not really seeing many horses up there at all. And that's also a high area of where horses have been shot with the Blue Waterholes. There was reputedly 170 odd horses around Blue Waterholes shot, which would now be bones, similar to the Corongo. So that's actually the point that we're kind of raising, Renee, and I thank you for articulating it in that way. We don't actually know, and we would like to.
Okay. Yeah, and just
Anybody
another thing. Yeah, just another thing too, getting back to airborne logistics saying that contracts are made with people. Well, who is the people or the person that that contract is made with?
Good point, Renee.
Who
And
who is the contract made with? Is it one person? Is it 2 or 3 people? We don't even know who the contract is made with.
so at the moment, again, I hate assuming, but the assumption would be that it's with Rocky and Claire. And therefore, Rocky and Claire have assumed the risk of this project on our behalf. They are, by de facto, our project managers. But we are the client, we are the funder, we are the project requester, and it's our project scope that we've effectively engaged with Airborne Logic. They've proposed a contract, and I don't think it's fair that just Rocky and Claire should be the sole deciders of the contract and the contract terms. There are other people who have experience in contract.
Yeah, and
contract
particularly
law.
and particularly if that's going to venture into another phase, that there could be a joint proposal and co-development happening with this IP as well. So who are those people?
So, for example, to be critical, Rocky could incorporate a company and he could do a deal with Airborne Logistics. He could become a member of their company. There's any number of opportunities.
Yeah.
And we want to rule those out because we want this open source. And to my mind, and I am going to put this to everybody, I would like to see this counting methodology open source so that anybody in the world can use it as the new world's best standard to count whales or horses or cows or sheep. We don't care. We want honesty in any animal counting because we want honesty in all animal welfare issues.
Correct.
Rachel,
yeah, just one last thing, and you know, I'm pretty strong on this, is that if there's going to be a financial gain out of this IP to whoever the contract or the co-developers are that might be proposed, that there really should be some sort of ratcheting thing that money goes back to Brumby causes or furthering counts.
Good point, Renee.
Or what is the contribution that Airborne Logistics are providing backwards to us? Are they discounting a $100,000 project to $76,000 cash? Well, we'd like to know that because that's an equity sharing arrangement that should be reflected in the contract and then might entitle them to ownership of some of the IP that they create. And are we solely reliant upon them to create the IP? The argument is no. I could take this imagery and give it to the Machine Learning Institute and get one of their researchers to develop a method to count this with AI. And they would say, oh, have you got somewhere where I can run the program? That's all we need to do. So it's it doesn't have to be quite so sort of secretive. It's really got to be a bit more open. And that's why I propose, for example, Renee to go in and help with comms and understanding the relationship between Airborne Logistics and us as the funders. Joanne Canning has unfortunately declined that I recommend her to do it. She has reasons, and I won't go into them. But I thank her for the conversation. I respect that. Rachel.
Thanks, Andrew. Hi, everybody. I've joined a little bit late to the meeting, but I'm a Brumbies supporter. I've got my own Brumbies. I have raised with the organisers of this Brumby count the fact that I own a data analytics company, and I can do AI, generative AI, you name it, and I have offered my services for free and my company's services for free to help with the count, but it's not been responded to by Rocky or Claire, but I still offer that service. And if anybody wants to take that up, I'm happy to do so that we can make sure that we are providing the best services that we can with the data that we generate or that is generated through this mapping process. And I'm not going to charge anything for that because I'm a supporter. And it's clear to me. Happy to give any information to anybody that wants it as to what my purpose is. But I think that what you're saying, Andrew, is that it's not clear how we are going to account for the money and how Rocky's going to account for the money, that it's potentially the services being put in the tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we just don't know, and that's unclear. So me, as a Brumby supporter, I don't feel comfortable giving any more money to the cause because it's not clear to me where it's going to go and how it's going to be used. But I'm happy to offer my services if that makes sense.
Rachel,
sorry, Rachel, if you can please contact me after this, and we'll have a one-on-one chat. Absolutely. One of the opportunities there just is that Airborne Logic do account, develop a software model that plugs the data in. One of the ways that you peer review is you stick the data into a different software model and see what it outputs. And so there is actually a role for Renee still to be a peer. And as I said, I spoke to this professor at the Machine Learning Institute. He is a likely peer for Airborne Logic, and he is shocked at the scale that they've proposed to take on.
Yes. Now, so I'm also shocked at the lack of information that we are being provided. I agree with what they're doing, but I can provide an independent review of what is happening at no cost. I'm not charging at all. I'll happily apply my company and all of my resources to do it. So happy to chat later.
Rachel, can I ask you a question?
Absolutely, Di.
Right now, seeing that you know how it all works. Now, in many conversations I've had with Claire, she was intrigued at imagery that and megapixel photos that Airborne had shown her. You know, she said to me, look, Di, it's incredible. It can pick up, a spot on a horse's back. So with that, why are they saying that they don't want to do Corango in certain areas because of the dead carcasses? Surely, and these are all skeletal, carcasses now. Surely the imagery would pick up the difference between a dead horse and a live horse.
Absolutely it can. There's no reason why it cannot.
That's right. And that's the part that's concerned me, because speaking to Claire, you know, she was intrigued. She said, Di, you have no idea what it can pick up and the megapixels. And then all of a sudden we're not doing these main areas because of the dead carcasses might get mixed up with horses laying down. Well, 50 horses don't lay down all together at once.
No,
And
no, they don't.
so you're saying that you believe that the imagery and the megapixels of this software can pick up the difference between a dead horse and a live horse?
Absolutely, it can.
Thank you. You've answered that.
I have no doubt, and this is how I make my living, Di.
Yep.
So it's and I've done it for the last 30 years before it really became something that was in mainstream.
Yep.
You know, we used to be able to take photos of people from 2 kilometres away and pick up the cigarette packet that they had in their hand for defence imagery. So
yes,
picking up the difference between a dead horse and a live horse, absolutely. There's no, it's night and day.
Thank you. Well, that's how. So I'm talking with Claire. That's what I always thought, but then all of a sudden, like you're saying, we can't do those areas because of the amount of dead horses, but there's just as many dead horses up at Blue Waterholes as Andrew said. So, you know, that's the part that's not making sense to me, Rachel, you know, and as I said.
What I can share with you is that it's called machine learning.
That's right.
So you load the imagery in and you build the program and you tell it go and it runs and it analyzes every photo. And then it gives you an output. You assess the output and you say, that's a dead horse, that's a dead horse, that's a dead horse, that's a live horse, that's a deer. And then you run it again.
Yes.
And it can even end up doing that itself. And that's why the dead horse argument doesn't wash for me. I think it's more to do personally with Snowy Hydro doesn't want us to take high resolution imagery of their work zones.
Yes.
And what's going on in Corango Plains. And that is not a good enough reason because that's our national park.
Yep.
And we want to know what's going on because that's where the parks appear to have chased the horses into. So,
Rachel, one more question. So with your company, so would you do it by fixed wing aeroplane or by drone or?
So I use drones predominantly.
Right. Well, see, there's lays one problem because we would not get permission off national parks to run the drone. That's why we couldn't do it count by helicopter. With the fixed wing, we don't need permission because you're above 1,000 metres.
But I can take the from any aircraft, from any speed. I can take the data and I can analyse it.
Oh, right. Okay.
From or what is produced, I can take that data and I can analyse it using AI, generative AI, machine learning, you name it, I can run it.
Right. Okie dokie. We'll have a chat to you after this Zoom. Thank you very much, Rachel.
Right. Now, anybody else, you know, you've got your hand up again or is still
no, just again, and Rachel has pretty much answered the question because I was just thinking that the public available data, Rachel, you'd be able to run it through your own program.
Of course I can. So I can use publicly available data. I can use data provided by anybody doing fixed wing. I can use satellite imagery as well. And that's all publicly available and down to 25 metres. So there's a lot of information that we can use to pull together this information.
Yeah. Well, we were told the reason we couldn't use satellite imaging was because I think it was 2006 since the last thing had been done over the northern end of the park. So, 2008. So we would have to run a whole new program, which would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars.
That's probably bullshit.
Yes.
To be honest with you, because there's imagery that I use in my day-to-day that happens every 25 days across the world.
Where have you been, woman?
Yeah.
So
Rachel.
Yes.
Rachel, so are you able to access satellite imagery to give us a snapshot for the last 30, 60, 90, 120 days of areas?
Yes, I can, but I can't without my team running through that satellite imagery. I can't give you anything that is appropriate or specific to the horse count, but I can access that information. Yes.
Okay. And you can zoom it down to 25 meters above ground.
25 meters. Yes. For
Well,
the
you can-
whole of the world.
I'd be able to count spots on Appaloosa.
You probably could.
So to give you
Alright.
some context,
Well, this
when
is
we
different to
reveal-
what we've been told.
Well, so
Yeah.
I work
So-
for Defence and I work for Australian government in some pretty secure organisations. I can't tell you who I work for, but
No.
what I do. And I offered
So
my
to give you
services
all
to
some
Rocky.
context,
So did you contact Claire Gallier herself?
No, I contacted Rocky via the GoFundMe and said
Yeah.
my company is available to help with this, and I have had no response.
Well, there we go.
well, so to give some context to that, when myself and a mate revealed that the Florence tunnel boring machine was stuck and not working, I took a fellow by the name of Simon Holmes a Court, Robert Holmes a Court's son, very well connected energy commentator.
I know the name. Yep.
Took him into, I took him into the hole. We bushwalked in and he looked at the hole and said, well, bugger me, that's a hole. That's not a shallow depression. He then rang Chris Bowen up, the energy minister, on his way back to Melbourne that very afternoon and said, Chris, there's a bloody big hole. I've just been there. Here's the photo and the video. He then bought the satellite imagery from a private company that provides the satellite imagery. They would also provide the same imagery for Snowy Hydro.
This is
And
Andrew, you have to
buy it. So
freely available. If
yeah,
you know
there's
the
freely
contact,
available.
buy it.
Yeah, but there's also much higher resolution, which does cost money where companies sell it to. So it's like Google Earth, but it goes much lower than normal Google Earth that we can access for free. So
20,
there are
25
options.
meters,
We
yes.
were told to answer a question. There's a question by, I think it was Seth. Seth asked a question, why have we all put in 80 grand? Well, we asked relevant questions and we were assured by Claire and Rocky that this was the better way to do the horse count, where we would have a resolution to ground level, 2 centimeters. That's grass level. And that's where we use the fixed wing craft and then analyze that imagery. So it's not that we've wasted our money, and we're not saying that, but we have some questions as part of a due diligence, which anybody would do with any project. And I don't believe the update provided tonight is sufficient, and I reject it. And I think it's terribly defensive and narky. So any other people want to comment, questions, thoughts, opinions?
Go on. Poppy?
So there's a couple of things then that I would propose, and they're for you all to consider. I would propose that, and I can put this up as a motion, and everybody can vote on it and say yay or nay. Couple of points. No money is paid out of the trust account, that apparently Nick Kirshner has the money, that no money is paid out of the trust account until we are satisfied and agree to the counting area. That's one thing that I would propose. Now, that also is to protect Rocky and Claire. So they are acting as a project manager. We have an unwritten contract, as it were, which is still valid at law.
Well,
And
it's still
some
a
people
verbal
might-
contract. So we still have a verbal
verbal
contract with
contract,
them.
they might not feel that it's been delivered if we only survey an area and there's only 5 horses in it, for example, and we've just spent $80,000 and we find 5 horses over 600 square kilometres. We would be disappointed with that outcome. We would be a bit cranky at our project managers. I think the project managers need to be a better accountable to us, to better explain the contract and the area proposed to be counted. So one way to do that would be to say to the trustee, the person guarding the money, we ask you to hold off on that money being moved until the project managers satisfy us that they are surveying the area that we want. The second thing that I would propose is that we say we want Karango and Nungar to be surveyed, maybe the Coonbill. We want areas where we know there are horses to be surveyed.
Well, that'd be
And-
Karango and Tantangua.
Correct. But yeah, Nungar, Tantanga, Karango, yes, that area. And thirdly, we need to know in advance when the plane is flying so that we can be out on the plains and be one of the forced errors, be one of the testing mechanisms for the AI. We'll stand out there, and if this program, if this image acquisition system can see down to 2 centimeters, it's going to see the people. We'll be identifiable. I'll wear a horse suit, and that's how you deliberately test the software to ensure much more rigor in its output.
Well, Rachel's just said that the software will pick up whatever.
It
that's right.
will. So I understand what you're saying, Andrew, and I don't disagree with it. But if we are there and we've got high vis on, and it's pretty clear to the AI, or the generative AI that's processing the images that are taken, it's pretty clear that that's not a horse. That is it's not a Brumbie, but it's clear. So it's
Yeah, so what I'm saying is
what
I'll wear a horse suit and stand on my own in the open where there's a bunch of humans, and we'll see what the program does. That's called forcing an error. And if the program comes back and says, this is not a horse, but we count it, I mean, that's what we want this program to be clever enough to do, because we want it to say that's a deer, that's not a horse, that's a deer. That's a foal, that's not a deer, for example. That's where this goes. So the key issues are Rocky has not been forthcoming in information. He can't even give me the account to donate the money. And he gave it to Dean Marsland. Dean Marsland dropped his money into the account. And then it turned up as an offline donation recorded in the GoFundMe. So there's a discrepancy in how. Well, I've asked him today, does he want my money? And if he doesn't, then tell me. He has not responded. As a project manager, that is a terrible client relationship. And I am putting it out to everybody. I'm not here to destroy the project, as has been alleged. Thank you, Marilyn. I'm glad you joined us tonight. We are here to ensure the best outcome for our money and for our horses in our national park. That's our objective. And I've put a lot of money into this because I haven't got any work done, and I've been working on this. I spent all day today background researching everything I can.
Andrew,
I know others.
can you get Carrie on so she can have her question?
Where is she? Hang on. Oh, well, she is. She's not muted. Go, Carrie.
Thank you, Andrew. I just wanted to add something to this, what you're saying here. There are limits on what you can do once a GoFundMe has started. So what you've been describing so far is like an investment, and GoFundMe doesn't work that way. This is a donation-based platform, and the money that you have given is given with no expectation of return. So you actually can't demand that they do anything. You're not an investor. That's not how GoFundMe works. So you're kind of limited on what demands you can make and what requests you can ask. And you have to do so politely because it's completely up to the fundraisers, and legally that is their right. Mm-hmm. The other thing with GoFundMe is that once the money has started coming in, you cannot change the conditions that you've advertised you're raising the money for. We all saw what happened with Celeste Barber with the $50 million that she raised for the bushfires. And then she started making promises that we're going to spend the money on this because so much has come in, we're going to change it. Legally, she couldn't do it. And she then had the funds to fight this and she couldn't get anywhere. So you can't change what they've promised to do for this fundraiser. You can start another fundraiser and do it separately, but you cannot change what has been promised in this one. They've actually been very wise and not been too specific with what they were doing, because that meant they weren't tied down to those specific things, which was very sensible of them when they set this up. So they've done it quite wisely, they've done it quite sensibly, and we need to make sure that no one is making demands or, you know, as you said, sabotaging the project when this project is going ahead. And if anyone regrets sending their money, and they can ask for their money back. And that's probably the best thing to do. And just pull out of it and take your money back, and don't,
Harry,
you know, let them do what they're doing. And then you can use the data that comes out of this and analyze it in whatever way you want, because they've already promised to make it public. So this fundraiser can't be changed as much as you're saying.
I disagree, Carrie. It can, because the aeroplane hasn't flown yet. The issue at hand is that...
It doesn't matter. They've started raising money and they've made promises. They cannot change how it's set up from what they have promised on GoFundMe. Otherwise, GoFundMe will not release the funds.
So apparently the funds are already out of the GoFundMe in Nick Kirshner's account. The issue is the expectation was given that the counting area would be the same as what the parks count, which would be Nunga, Coonbill, Karango, etc. That's the expectation. That's Di's memory. That's a lot of people's memory. I am saying they have not lived up to what they told us. And because the money is out of the GoFundMe, I hear what you're saying. It's with Nick Kirshner. They haven't flown the aeroplane. The key here is data acquisition. The processing and the peer reviewing are second and third level outcomes. The first outcome is the data acquisition. And now that the money's raised, it's still our money in trust with Nick Kirshner, where Rocky and Claire are standing as our project managers. I am saying on behalf of many people, they are not executing the project in accordance with what they told us they would do and what we expected they would do, and that they can tweak that to bring it back to our expectation. And then this is important, because if they screw it up, the horses up there are dead. They will be dead by the middle of February, and they're not coming back. That's what's at stake. No one's ego, well, Rocky's ego might be at stake, but it's the horses in the park who are at stake. That's who we are actually fighting for. And
the more infighting we have among Brumby groups, the more horses are going to die. It's as simple as that.
And we're not trying to fight with anybody. I will say for myself, I will reply to any shit that's thrown at me, but there is a limit, and I've tried to hold off recently, but I hear what you're saying. I agree fairly strongly with what you're saying. We had an expectation and it's now not been met, and we are asking for our expectation to be met. Please, anyone else care to comment?
Hi, Andrew. Rachel. I agree with you on so many fronts that you've just said, but do we need to just make it clear to Rocky and Claire as to what our expectations are, and put that down in very clear dot points as to what we need to do. It's because I
Yes.
don't that has happened so far. Now I might be out of the
That's
loop, but from a perspective of a PM and a data person, you've got to have very specific requirements, and we have those already. Do Rocky and Claire know exactly what they are, and have we provided those previously? And maybe that's occurred, and I could be speaking out of turn, but if it's not, can we just provide them what it is that we require?
yes. The answer is yes, but at the moment they are refusing to listen. But that's
Okay.
part of what tonight is about.
So
Tonight is
why
about
are they refusing to listen?
arrogance, is my opinion. Rocky is incredibly arrogant, and he is refusing to listen because a lot of people have tried to contact him. They have all told me, and they are frustrated, and that's why I've put this together tonight to help the various frustrated people realize A, they're not alone, and B, Rocky's treating us all like shit.
Well, so
But
I agree
Rocky-
with you. I agree with you, Andrew, because I have tried to reach out to to Rocky twice, and I have not had a response. And I've offered all of my
So,
company's capability in doing this, and I have not had a response.
So Rocky apparently watched my live yesterday, and yet said in the Zoom update tonight that they're not watching social media. Well, that's not true. He watched
Well,
my
that'd be
live.
good. Yep.
So we can give them some written instruction, and that's what I'm kind of proposing. We've got a good collection of people here who have all contributed, and that's what I'm asking if you would like to do. We're not serving ultimatums. We are trying to re-engage our project managers to execute the project to satisfy our expectations. And none stronger than Di saying she remembers the conversation she had with Claire and the importance of the Nungar, etc. Now, there is other information which I have and which Di has, which we have been asked not to reveal, which goes to the tension between Claire and Rocky that has occurred in the last couple of weeks.
No,
And so it's not clear sailing. There have been frustrations between them. So we unfortunately know a bit more about things than we are really able to divulge, which takes us to the limit of the conversation. Di, jump in.
yeah, well, it's more, Claire's not a confrontational person. As she says, she's a numbers girl. All this, people getting involved. Claire just likes to do her job, be on the computer. Back to just what Rachel said before, even with the satellite imaging, Claire was all for that, but we were given the impression that that was going to cost too much money. As I said, Claire, was so impressed with the imaging, the megapixels. Rachel just backed that up, that yes, with the dead horses, the reasons, I just think the reasons that certain areas aren't being covered are unwarranted, what's being said, and that's been obvious tonight by what Rachel has said. So Claire was, really wanted thermal imaging and all that sort of stuff. As I said, it all just comes back to I don't know who's sailing the ship, but we're not getting the answers. As I said, the only main two concerns with me is I always thought that we would cover the main areas that national parks do on their annual spot count, because that would give us credibility and something to argue with. Doing areas that aren't horse populated open plains where there's no horses is just absolutely ridiculous as far as I'm concerned. And as I said, Rachel, I really need to speak with her some more because, you know, she's covered a lot of things here tonight which completely go against what we've been told. So, as I said, I've never had a problem with the count being independent and groups not being involved. I think that was a wise move because of all the stuff that goes on between different groups, but we need some answers and we need them now. And then back to what Renee said originally with the IP work, Airborne Logic owning it. Now I have concerns after the inquiries you made today, whether Airborne Logic are capable of doing this count for us. And this has all come about tonight. So there's many concerns. As I said earlier, we only get one shot at this.
Sarah?
Yeah, hi
hand
guys. So I just don't understand why there can't be open communication with members, at least, you know, some sort of leadership within the wider community. We have put our faith in this count to be done with Claire and Rocky at the helm. I figured Rocky was just going to be raising the funds. Claire would be
Can't hear you, Sarah.
Sorry, Sarah. Sarah, can you turn your
there
video
would
off?
be consultation
Audio
with
only.
people like Cher. How's that?
Sorry,
Yep.
Sarah, can you do audio? That's better. Audio only.
Yeah, is that any better? Is that all right?
Much better. If you could just start the last 5 seconds again.
Yeah, no worries. I'm just wondering, you know, I know Joanne Canning wasn't sort of permitted to be involved. She felt excluded, and other people that were very interested in making sure this was done correctly, they have been excluded from the project. And there's been a lot of secrecy. You know, and I'm wondering why the secrecy when this is a fundraiser by the community. We all have a vested interest in protecting the horses, and we're up against the government. So without transparency within our own project, how can we succeed? We can't have people who have no experience in organising this kind of project. And they don't, you know, Claire is fabulous at what she does. She's a statistician. This project manager has never done this kind of work before. They usually count plants. How do you compare, and how did they come to the conclusion that these guys would be the best project managers for the job? Why didn't we get any consultation? We need a bit of we need a group, a board of members that we can all vote on, and we can say, these 5 people are in the loop. You don't have to tell us all the details, but these people we respect, and we can vote on who those people may be. We can say, these are our representatives. Can you please at least communicate with them? Because Rocky's over his head. He can't communicate even with Rachel, who's offering a service that's crucial and for free. Like, how could we get to this point where there's no communication?
Rachel is even able to, hang on, Di. Rachel's even able to offer a parallel service.
Absolutely.
Maybe she can process some of the data faster, or Rachel could take a smaller section. Let's say we surveyed the Nungar Plain. We could give the Nungar Plain to Rachel and say, hey, Rachel, can you just do this area? And maybe she's faster.
If we had a cost analysis and a breakdown of the costing of everything, we could say, hey, guys, don't you worry about the machine learning aspect. We have someone going to do it pro bono for us. You guys just fly the plane and get the imagery. That, you know, we could actually work together to make it where we need it to be, instead of this random area that doesn't seem to be useful to anyone. What if they find 3 horses?
Well, we don't even know. The point is, Sarah, we don't even know what areas are being done.
No, and that should be clearly on the table. Why is there no communication? Why is it
we
so
only
secretive?
know what's not being done.
Absolutely, the most important and crucial areas.
So I have proposed, and I've received Renee's support, that Renee join Claire and Rocky to assist with communication, oversight, review. Because if Claire is as overworked as she keeps telling us that she is.
She is.
And Rocky's a builder. and he makes sausages, he's not an aeroplane expert or what have you. Now, I'm not character assassinating, but when I look at someone's background and I see that he doesn't even have a LinkedIn profile, he's got nothing. So he might be a really good builder and he could be a good project manager in building houses. This is a different, complete scale. Renee has no experience in AI, which means she has a wonderful objective viewpoint.
Renee's
She
a
looks
good
at it as an
communicator.
outsider. She's a great communicator. She is well respected by everybody in this community. And I hope I don't make you blush, Renee, but everybody talks incredibly fondly of Renee, and the fact that Renee is prepared to make herself available in amongst everything else she does. Rocky would be an idiot to refuse that. And I'm saying that in clear language, Rocky, if you watch this afterwards. You are a fool if you do not accept help. You are clearly in over your head. You are tackling something supposedly on your own. Claire is telling us all that she is so overworked and so underwater with her university commitments. Has she overcommitted to also do this count? And that's not saying that she should get out of it, but
No.
we know that she is extremely stressed and expecting all of our eggs to be sat in Claire's lap. And then
Well,
something doesn't work.
Andrew,
Is not fair.
For the record,
Yep.
as you know, I am offering my company, and I do AI, generative AI, ML, you name it, and I'm offering my company's services for free to make sure that we have this count in the best possible way that we can, because we've got one shot.
That's right.
Get this to Parliament. We've got one shot to get our voices heard in amongst all of the other shit that's going on. We've got one go.
Yep.
And I'm offering my services, my company services, and everything that I can throw at this. And I've offered that to Rocky. No response yet. But it's here. I'm open. I'm offering.
Okay, so thank you for your offer, and I propose to everybody that we support Rachel's offer and convey it, and we request Rocky meet with Rachel ASAP. And I look forward to talking with Rachel after, because I have had some experience. I know this shit too. Now let's go back. Our funds, your funds, because they haven't received mine yet. Is everybody happy if we use the words our funds?
Yep.
Should not be expended until we agree to the areas being counted. And maybe there is a perfectly logical reason not to do Nunga. I'm just not satisfied that there currently is that reason. So that 1.1 that we convey, no progress on this project until the area is agreed to. And that's an instruction to Rocky and Nick Kirshner and Claire.
It should be the funds. They're not our funds anymore.
Sure. I'm in your hands here. I'm just proposing.
I agree.
Anybody else, please unmute and tell us whether you agree or.
I agree. Renee?
Sorry, I've just had a call that I need to attend to, and I've not been focusing on the last couple of minutes. I've got to go.
Okay. Understand, Renee. Thank you for joining. I can appraise you of it later in your own time. Okay, we'll just recap. This is outcome of tonight's meeting. Outcome number 1, no progress on the project until the or funds spent until agreement is reached on the areas to be counted.
Just get people to put their hands up.
Yeah, we could do that. It's still a bit crappy the way it says. I haven't written that very well. We have to have a meeting in a way with Rocky and Claire to bash out the areas.
I agree. I agree, but I also feel just like, just don't want to. I want to make sure that everything still goes ahead and everything doesn't fall into an absolute bomb disaster. Does that make sense? I'm just so worried
Kylie,
that it will.
Kylie, that's why we're here.
Yeah, and
Kylie,
and look,
that's why we're here.
Yeah, and I do feel that, what is the point of doing the recount if we're not going to have the legs to stand on when it comes up to standing up to the government.
That's the biggest point.
Yeah. Regardless of who's put in who's doing it or anything else, we need the legs to stand on to stand up to the government. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah. No one has a problem with Claire doing the count and Rocky being the independent person, but I think we need to agree that we have to relook at where the count. We know where the count's not being done, but we don't know where the count is being done. And is that going to be enough to give us leverage with the government? At the moment, I don't think so.
And I also think that, as you said before, we are the clients. So
that's right.
As the clients, you should be telling the business what we want as a client.
Yes.
Yep.
I've rewritten it, and this is something we'll work on if more people can choose to vote. Not to spend funds until majority agree on areas to be counted. Need to agree on areas to be counted. So it's an instruction to our project managers.
Do a show of hands.
Sorry.
My name's Bronwyn.
Yeah, show of hands. And I get Bronwyn. So it's really hard to see who's talking, but yeah, thank you, Bronwyn.
Sorry, I was just going to ask, wouldn't priority be just confirming that this company's the count company? I can't remember their name, sorry. Just confirming.
Airborne Logic.
Airborne Logic, just to confirm that they're not too green to be doing a massive job like compared to what they normally do. It sounds like they're just doing small areas and grapes or something you mentioned. How are they fine with doing a massive job like the national park?
Well, that's what Andrew's been following up today.
Oh, cool. Okay, no worries.
We don't know, Bronwyn.
Yeah,
no, we don't know, and we would have to accept them at their word to a degree, but
yes,
somehow they've convinced Rocky and Claire, who we have some faith in.
Yeah.
But it really comes down to there's a conversation they could have with a couple of us where they might be able to convince us that they do have that capacity or they can step up to that capacity. And that's part of you need to tell us which areas you're proposing to do, or we want you to do these areas. We have to agree on the areas.
Oh, right.
So I guess the second element is Nunga, Kurango. What are the areas we want done?
Tantangua, Kurango, and what else have they eliminated? Coonamble.
Well, why don't we say from Ware's Yard to Tantangara, the Kurango Plain?
All the open plains should be done.
Yeah. The other thing with regards to Kurango and Tantangara is when the plane's flying, we can stand on the hills and count horses and give a GPS coordinate of where we see them. That should match the imagery. That's how we prove the software as well. Again, confirming the outcome or it's forcing the error.
Well,
But-
Rachel covered that.
Yes,
Rachel.
so that's, I'm just putting it. So at the moment, we've only got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hands up to 6 hands up to support sort of motion number 1, not to spend funds until the majority agree on the areas to be counted, to agree on the areas to be counted.
I agree, but I don't know how to do the thumbs up. So there you go.
Yeah, neither do I. I don't know how to do the thumbs up. So
Oh, down the bottom, in the bar, down the bottom in the middle,
Reactions.
raise hand. Reactions, or it says raise hand. So you just click the raise hand button and up comes the yellow hand.
Hit
No,
So if
reaction.
everybody could,
I've got
everybody
Reaction.
could,
I can't see it. Sorry. If you just want to put it one in for Bronwyn. Sorry.
down the very bottom in the, it says
Oh, hang
mute,
on,
stop
raise
video,
hand. There you
security,
go.
participants.
Yep, done it.
Poppy can't raise my hand. I can't raise my hand.
Mm,
I
okay.
can't.
Okay, we'll
I
accept it.
agree.
It's raised. Susie Little, Elaine, Rachel, if you're still with us, please
Oh, okay.
let us know. We're hovering on 50% raised hands at the moment. Actually, we're just over 50% because my hand would be raised. I'll raise my hand if that.
So yes, I'm still here and my hand is raised. Rachel.
Yeah, I know you are. You're at the top. So we just need to go through Judy Goggin, Helen Milliken, Margaret Wood, Marie's iPhone, Elaine Goodyear, Rachel Sidden, Ham, Helen, Mel, Shardy, Party, Jeremy. Are you raising your hand or are you proposing to speak against?
Speaking against, thanks. We
And
have no
that's
say
how-
over this. It's a waste of time.
We do, Carrie. I'm challenging you on that. We do. All right, well, how are we going to record this? I've got 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 19, 20, 24, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 against. Okay, can everybody not, can you collapse your hands? Can you
Lower your hand.
everyone lower your hand? Because this has been recorded. I can help some people. Low, okay, everybody, no hands. Now, if you are not in agreement with that, please raise your hand. This is how we prove that there's not just a bunch of dead accounts. You've got to participate in the vote, so please, and we're not judging you. This is democracy in action. Please raise your hand if you do not agree with that position. So far we have 2, 3. 4. 5. And if you're not sure, it's in the bottom menu bar down the bottom. It says mutes, participants, share screen, reactions, raise hand. If you want to now oppose our idea, please raise your hand. We have 5. Any more raised hands? Last call. All right, well, I'm going to call that as a resolution of the group. Okay, we can unraise your hands and we'll move on to the next bit. Thank you. It's okay, Carrie, I'm going to make this comment. When you say leave them to it, Claire is the expert, let her do her job. I'll tell you a little secret. Rocky is not letting Claire do her job. Claire wanted infrared or thermal imaging and Rocky said no. So when you say let Claire do the job, Claire wanted the thermal imaging, and there is an opportunity, instead of doing thermal imaging across the whole survey area, because it requires narrower flight paths, you could do a smaller survey area with the thermal imaging, because this company puts thermal imaging on their drones. They have the thermal imaging stuff, or they could use a drone. They do have the capacity. So I'll tell you clearly, Claire has not been allowed to fully do her job. There have been limits placed on her by Rocky, and that is part of the point. So now, I guess part 2 is back to the areas. I'll get a new page. I could distill this down to say, where's Yard to Tantangara, Karango, Nunga, Karango are the target areas that we definitely want done. And I would preface that by saying I counted 10 mobs of horses in there on Sunday. The Kyandra open plains, it's a bit undulating, but it's a pretty clear open plain area. A bit of quality information on the Kyandra, being that it's also the highway. You'd see the cars on the highway in this imagery. And then right up the top, Peppercorn or Coolaman. Opening the floor to consideration. So I've got 1, where's Yard to Tantangara, 2, Nunga, 3, Karango, 4, Kyandra, 5, Peppercorn, 6, Coolaman. Please unmute and let's discuss that.
Yeah, I agree with all those areas.
Yeah, I agree too. And why do we have to limit it? Because they're all joined. Karango, Long Plain, Cooinville, Blue Water Holes, Wares Yards. It's the same plane that our Brumbies are on.
That's right. So the difficult thing is we don't know what areas are being surveyed. We know which areas aren't, but we don't know what are. So, but, you know, we have to include those areas with the larger horse populations. It's just common sense.
So my experience,
Sorry,
Jim's Hut and Rango and Cooinville getting out to Blue Water Holes, there's hundreds of Brumbies.
Yes.
And they love it. I love it. I love seeing them, but I don't know how we make that a safe space.
Could I just make a comment? What is the point of taking lots of high resolution imagery and spending all this money on areas where there's no horses, when you could assess first where the horses are, limit the scope to that work, and then you're not wasting most of the processing fees, and the data is just all empty.
well,
What's the point?
This is our argument.
Yeah, so Sarah, in essence, the plane flies north to south, does a U-turn, south to north, does a U-turn, north to south. It's in essence going to fly over all of these areas.
Yeah, right.
My query is to why not Karango and down the sort of Tantangara area. That's where Snowy Hydro is, and we are taking video down to 2 centimeters resolution, which is grass level. If they don't want us, well, tough luck. That's our national park, and that's our taxpayers' money building a very large industrial machine. So the point is that if we want quality, we need a mix of low density, medium density, high density, as in horses.
Yeah.
And the aeroplane flies from Blue Water Holes to the highway, which is just below sort of Kyandra. He does a big U-turn and then he
Okay.
flies from Kyandra back to Blue Waterholes, but he's one distance over, and then he does another U-turn. He flies back down again, another distance over, and then he turns another U-turn. He flies back. He is covering all of these all these areas. There is no excuse not to include these areas. And if there is bushy bits, I'd still love to see how the computer program handles the bush, but you can always exclude that from the data set and just focus on the open plains. You can pull out any data. You can put a GPS coordinates and suck the data out of purely open plains.
But are
to
we
focus
sure
on the
that's where
open
they're going to? That's why we need to know the flight path, because what if they're just going
Well-
up in an aeroplane and doing a tiny spot, not any of the areas where the horses are? What's the point?
Correct. And this is the issue.
Yeah, that's
We're
the
forcing the issue.
primary issues. It
This
needs
is
to
the
at least
And
do
again,
it.
we come back to the point that I would assess the project as a very simple 30% data acquisition, filming, 30% processing, mobilization, demobilization, and 30% peer reviewing.
Yeah.
So on that basis, 30% of 80,000 is 24,000. So why not spend 40,000 on data acquisition and acquire all of the data?
Yeah.
Focus on a higher upfront capital investment, acquire all of the data,
And then process it.
and then data process selected amounts.
Yeah.
And let's say Snowy Hydro said, you legally can't take photographs of us. Okay, we'll process that data and we will keep that confidential.
Yeah.
But we still want to count the horses in there,
That's right.
but we won't publish that bit.
Well,
Absolutely.
Rachel's offered to process it all.
And she could be one
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
peer
well-
reviews. I don't know.
But let's say Snowy Hydro have a limit and that we're not allowed to film them for some reason. Well, it's up to them to make that argument. Secondly, we could say, okay, we're still going to process the data, but we won't put it out publicly. And these are our trusted partners, and put a nominate a representative to join us. And by the way, chuck some dollars in and we'll do what you want. It's our park, it's our horses, and this is our money. So there should be no reason to not count those classic publicly accessible areas. And I have had so many people contact me shocked that those areas are not proposed to be counted. So we're not talking about Snowy Plain. We're not talking about Urangabilly. We're talking the main northern block, which also fairly well mimics the retention area where the law says the horses are actually allowed to be. So, Kim, you got your hand up. I did mute you in case you had background noise. Kim, you wanting to say something? Where'd he go? Okay, is anybody, oh, there he is. Anybody else have some comment? Mirette, you're a local girl. You know those areas. Can you share your opinion with us? Sorry, local lady.
Come on, Mirette.
Judy Goggin, Helen, anyone else, please jump in. Nikki, you're up there a bit. Please comment.
Yeah, completely agree. We need to get those big plains where they've been chasing the horses into. I went out with a Cochrane track, oh gosh, December, and the number of horses around Corango all the way up to Blue Waterholes. If parks are counting them, we've got to include it.
Exactly. Or we've wasted all the resources, all the money, and we're not going to get the result we want.
Yeah, agree. It needs to be apples for apples.
Yep, not pears.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I'll just jump in and say that I was up in late, I think it was mid to late November. I took a trip up there, and that's exactly where I found the horses as well. Corango, Nunga. We have to count the horses. We've got to count where they're at. It's no good counting empty space.
That's right.
It's
Andrew,
not going
could
to
you
prove
please-
anything.
Could you please unmute the lady with the, it says iPad. She's got a hand up. She doesn't know how to unmute. How do we do it? Bottom left. There we go.
Hey, Andrew, a question. The other night when Rocky and Claire done the Zoom, they said it's going to take at least 6 weeks before they get hold of the data. So why is it going to take 6 weeks after the plane's been up to do the imaging of the horses, and then another 6 weeks before they actually get the results of the data? That's what I'm curious about. Why is it going to take so long?
I think, Jessie, that's
You're
all.
muted, Andrew.
Sorry,
Andrew?
Di.
I think that's all to do with the peer reviewing, because it's going to be peer reviewed a couple of times. So they will produce the imaging, and that'll all, correct me if I'm wrong, Rachel, and then it goes on to another firm to be peer reviewed, and so it can take up to 6 weeks. Is that right, Rachel?
Yes, that's about the average time. So yes, I wouldn't say that there's anything to be concerned about, because they have, like, there's a lot of data. There's a lot of data to be reviewed. So yes.
If I can jump in to answer, when we had the Zoom, we were told that after the plane flies and the data is acquired, there was 6 weeks to run it through the machine learning program to get a preliminary output, and then another 6 weeks for that to be peer reviewed, where peers who are selected to review would maybe run it through their program, or they're given the program and they run it, or they zoom in on the images. We could be given the footage days after the plane flies and start manually counting by playing the video file on our computers and counting what we see by zooming in. It's like Google Earth. It's like a big giant Google Earth image. You get a big giant image and you can zoom around just like on Google Earth. That's my understanding. So the 2 lots of 6 weeks were image from the aeroplane, 6 weeks, computer output, another 6 weeks, computer output cross-checked. If that makes sense.
So you're right, Andrew, but you can look at it humanly. So you can take the images, you can zoom in, do what you need to do from regards to accounts, but it's still going to be quicker if we can do AI, so artificial intelligence, across that imagery than what we can do from a human point of view. And now 6 weeks is probably at the larger time frame, I would say, because you could do it in 4 days if you needed to. Maybe a week.
It depends on your access to compute. Well, Rachel, it depends on your access to compute. I don't know what your compute level is.
So I've got lots of access because I've worked with government organisations at a very secure level. So my access is I can run this shit in like 24 hours, but not everybody has that level of ability from their company perspective. So
okay, all right.
You know, we'll talk about it later, but 6 weeks.
We will.
It's not out of the realm.
So
of
6
possibility.
weeks is. So 6 weeks is a conservative. That's how long it might take us. It's a clever way in project management to then deliver quicker to your client. But
it's a conservative process. Yes, fine. Yep, happy.
Okay, so we get everybody to raise their hands that we are going to indicate to Claire and Rocky that we want Where's Yard the Tantangara, Nungar, Karengo, Kyandra, Peppercorn, Coolaman, Long Plain, Blue Waterholes. If you could all raise your hands that we agree that those areas are included. Again, just press the raise hand button and we will record this. Okay, a little bit longer. We're back to 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. So we're at 22 at the moment. We're at 22. If you don't know how to do it, just sing out.
Jeff and I say yes.
Okay, what's your name?
Julie Grattan.
Julie.
Oh, Julie Grattan. Yep, thank you, Julie. I'm gathering that.
And
Righto.
Jeff.
And Jeff
Sorry.
Grattan.
Good job, 26. Thank you, Jeff. So we've got 26. 26 agree, 27 agreeing.
And Poppy, she can't do it.
So you've got Susie Little raising her hand, Lynn McKenna raising her hand as well. Just make sure.
Susie Little, okay. Yeah, you could always stick your hand up on the video too if you want.
Poppy.
And Poppy, yep.
30, right? We've got 30 people in agreement. That's clearly the majority. There's 36 people present. Okay, everybody turn your hands off.
Only got one on.
Okay, everyone's hand nearly off. Okay, now please, to prove attendance and what have you, please raise your hand if you do not agree with those areas. Please raise your hand if you do not agree with those areas. The reason I'm doing that is in case the accounts are inactive, that there's no one actually listening, just like Indigo Brader. Are you still with us? Because no one's against it that I can see at the moment. Okay, there's 0.
0 is what I see.
Okay, a simple test now. Cat D, you may. Cat D, Indigo Brader, Marie's iPhone, Judy Goggin, Margaret. There's some of the ones down the bottom that don't seem to have engaged. Could you just indicate that you're still with us and listening? Raise your hand or unmute and say hi. Thumbs up.
I'm here.
Yeah, I can't tell who that is. Sorry.
That's Rachel.
Marie,
Yeah, I'm here. I'm not AWOL. I just can't comment on areas of the national park that I'm unfamiliar with. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you. All right, thank you. Pop your hands down. There's a couple of accounts that aren't active. That's fine. Now, please, any further issues? Cheryl? Please, anybody?
Cheryl's got a hand up, Andrew.
Yeah, I know, but I can't unmute her. Just unmute.
Press
Bottom
unmute,
left.
Cheryl.
Yeah, bottom left corner is the unmute button, or go to your picture and click the red microphone. We'll try again. Anybody else, please? This is our last chance before we wrap up. Thank you all for your time, but before we wrap up for the night, any other contributions, questions or concerns?
I think the main concerns have been done.
Addressed.
Yeah, mine would just be, can we sort of suggest a better, I'll just turn off my video. Can we suggest a better way to communicate, with the organisers? If they're happy to communicate with, say, like a representative like Renee, who's impartial, not involved in politics of anything, just wants the best outcome. But we do need communication because, yeah, it'd be great to know if we could reduce some area of the budget and favour mapping more of the area, and maybe we drop back on the peer review and we do the mapping first of the areas we need, and we raise the funds for the peer review after the fact. Like, there are things we can change to ensure we get what we need. And that's our only concern. We have no time left.
Okay,
Time is of the essence.
The last motion I'll propose is that we have an urgent and immediate Zoom meeting with Rocky and or Claire, and that they accept Renee's assistance in communication and dialogue.
Yep.
Raise your hand if you agree.
Also, potentially my help from
Yes.
Correct.
Point of view.
Absolutely.
No, I think that's. I
Yep.
think it's great what you're offering, Rachel.
Yeah.
Thanks, Di.
Thank
Okay,
you.
well, we've got more than 50% agreement voting. Carrie, Rachel, anyone else caring to vote?
Poppy agrees. I don't know if you can hear me.
Poppy, yep. We can hear you, Poppy.
Yep, I agree. And can't find my hand again.
Yeah, that's 20 out of 30.
We just need communication, and we need to really get this right, and it's the areas being covered. That's basically what tonight's been about. As I said, I've had 122 messages from people saying, why aren't we doing the areas that national parks do annually? And as I said, it's come down to, we were told because of the dead horses and because of cost, but Rachel has answered all that for us, so I appreciate her offer. And maybe if Rocky hears this tonight, he might respond to Rachel's 2 attempts to reach out and take it on board what she's offering us, because it's a big offer.
Thanks, Di.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Right.
can I just ask a question, guys?
Yep.
Just because I probably have missed it. So when the national parks do their annual, flyover, et cetera, so they don't do sort of the southern end of the park, or is that done separately, or they just mainly focus on the retention zone?
Well, they focus on the northern end, where 80-odd% of the population of horses are. So that's where they do their annual count.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Because that's
part of the reason for
population.
that is the southern end is incredibly forested and hilly.
Yep.
Yep.
So it's wilderness. It's incredibly difficult. There are no tracks in there of any substance. It's a bastard to walk through. There's the ski fields only, and then everything else is bush. And so whilst there are horses at Dead Horse Gap, if you go up to them and they run off, they get 50 metres and they've disappeared into the bush, whereas Long Plain, you can see them for kilometres. So they do a helicopter survey where the observer sits in the helicopter and looks out. There's one observer looking out each side of the helicopter.
Yep.
And we don't even know if they use binoculars. They're just using their eyes, we believe. And they fly along like contour flying. So they're just looking in the open fields, and of that, they guess the number of horses by saying cluster 0 to 3, cluster 3 to 6, cluster 7 to 10, cluster 20, for example. But they don't take a photograph to prove the size of those clusters. So they could say cluster of 50, but there's no proof that 50 or that there wasn't 32 or there wasn't 61, for example. Again, we're coming back to the quality of the data. What this survey does is takes an unarguable image like Google Earth down to the blade of grass level, basically. It's a snapshot, and it's then frozen in time. So you can't argue with it.
No, so basically, my understanding is that you're saying that they really don't take much notice of the heavily timbered areas of the southern end of the park at all. They mainly just base their information on the northern end of the park.
And they do, well, yes, and it's even worse than that. They look at the open ends of the park where it's fairly easy to count the horses, and then they do a calculation to assume horses that they missed because they were behind rocks or in the trees. And because the helicopter flies at 60 metres above the ground, and it flies down and then turns around and flies back. There's no reason they don't count the same horses twice because they've legged it over the hill and gone into the next valley. I watched the Kyandra horses traverse in under a minute from high up on the left-hand side of Kyandra, across the highway, down into the creek, and up the other side over towards the Goandra Trail. A minute.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So really, we have to get those places done. There's no point in doing the other stuff. We've just got to get the other stuff, the northern end stuff done.
Yeah, well, we have no comparison. We can't fight them on their count if we don't even count the areas that they've counted.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
We can't fight them on their count because they don't give us their count information. I asked for the audio recording of the observations from the observers, and Di's been told in writing that there is no audio track to provide. Well, what the hell was transcribed to then give to Cairns to put into his formula?
Yeah, that's right.
So we're dealing with a ridiculous situation, and we are taking it to the next level to win the argument and to have clear, inarguable, irrefutable evidence. It's like a super Google Earth image where you can see the golf balls on the golf course and count them. That's what we're doing.
Sounds good.
Could I just ask a question of Rachel, since she's an expert in this area? What estimate would she have about, if you were to budget the project, how much of it is so high because they've never done machine learning before for this, and that they have to program it? Like, whereas if we started with someone like Rachel or a company that does it all the time, does it cost them less because the machines have already learned, and is it quicker? And could we save money in that area by going to someone with more expertise in that area and have Airborne Logic just do the flight path, just do their, to get the imagery?
Good question. That's a really good question, because yes, so machines that already have information, that have learned from previous paths or previous information that has been provided to the machine, yes, it's cheaper because there's technology, there's language, there's words. I'm probably not saying it right, but there's a whole lot of information that is provided because the machine has already done it before.
Absolutely.
So yes, It's
Maybe-
cheaper and
may-
it's more effective because it's already been done previously.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a parallel question, Rachel. Can you count humans?
We can count anything.
Can you count humans?
In regards to what? So give me an example.
An image. If I gave you a Google Earth image or a satellite image and I asked you to count the humans, can you count the humans in an image?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So would you use the same program to count a horse? And how hard is it to modify that program to help?
I'd have to teach the program to pick up a horse as opposed to a deer, as opposed to a dog, as opposed to a pig. You know, we've got all of these things in our national parks, but the computer program can learn these things pretty quickly because there's size, there's just so many differences that you can put into the computer program that will allow you to differentiate between a pig, a deer, a horse, a human. Human's got 2 legs, horse has 4. But then you have to talk about, you know, a deer versus a horse versus a pig, but there's size differences. So the computer program takes all of that into consideration when it's counting whatever it's put before it.
Okay, cool. We'll take that conversation tomorrow. I've got your number. Thank you. Any other questions? Anybody? Any other thoughts? We've just hit 9:30. I appreciate everybody's patience and passion, and I'm enjoying your passion. Please, one last call around. Any other ideas? I can't tolerate any more mozzie bites, so I need to go inside.
Yeah, I would just suggest that, transparency with the budget is important because we could move the scope around, you know, we could get what we needed. No one has to have their toes trampled on and say, you don't like the way I'm asking for it to be done. No, we just need as much done as we can to do it intelligently. And if we can get other people who have machine learning already to do half that job for half the price, then we could save money. And that needs to be a concern of the
And Sarah, that's exactly my offer.
Yes, absolutely.
Cool. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
I'm going to wrap this up now with a closing thought. I'm concerned for Claire, and she is a passionate woman. I'm a bit frustrated with her at the moment. She's a passionate woman, and I stood and spoke to her at Tumut for some time just before we both spoke. And I'm concerned that if there is a failure in this and we get shit imagery or we get a shit program or the national parks basically say we won't accept it, I don't want Claire to carry that personally. Because we're with her, we've given her our money. I want us all to own this success together, assuming a success, and the success is counting the horses that are left. We've not been very good at saving them. And that's not a criticism. It's just that we're up against a shit government. But what's at stake is the remaining horses. We're up against a considerable enemy, as it were. I don't want Claire to take on the loss of this personally, or the failure or the screw up or whatever could happen. And that's why I am pushing hard upon Rocky to stop being what he is, to accept the offers of help from some very clever people that are out there and people with a range of experience, so that all together we own this outcome, good, bad, or indifferent. That's what motivates me. This is not for me to be a hero or destroy it. I am speaking on behalf of a lot of people who have put in money, who want this to work. I'm pretty confident it will. But if it doesn't, I don't want this to destroy Claire, because that's not fair. She's taken on a risk. We're backing her in that risk. We stand with her with that risk. Just like we stand with her in that parliamentary inquiry, even though we're not allowed to go. But we're all online watching. That's the message we need to convey to her, is
Well
take
said.
down the Chinese wall between us.
Well
Absolutely.
said. Well said, Andrew. Well said.
Yeah, here.
So can we call a halt to it? Thank you all very much for joining and persisting, and I'll draft up this communication, and I'll get this loaded up onto I'll use my YouTube, and I'll post it up on, I think I can load it up on Facebook as a video as well, so I'm not criticized from trying to make money from it. But if we do make any money from it, I'll donate it to the horses. I don't think we will.
I'm
It's
happy
just
to
that it's a
share.
good,
I'm happy to share whatever you can post.
it's a good repository. No, it's just where we host the video. So it's a good repository. The YouTube puts it all together for us quite nicely, and it gives us view counts and metrics. So thank you all very much. I feel your passion, and we move to the next stage. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Thank you, Rachel. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Rachel.